This episode is brought to you by Podbean, the easiest, most affordable option to get started in podcasting. Stay tuned to hear how you can get your first month of Podbean for free. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Committed Critics, a pop culture podcast where we're not only committed to our opinions, but also each other. Aww. I'm Kevin Lau.
And I'm Ryan Davis.
And today we are with without Zach, not without Zach. Man, when he's not here, my tongue just twists and I can't do anything right. Zach, we miss you. Wish
Zach,
you were
come back.
here. Wish you were here to talk about books with us, even though that's like your least favorite topic that we talk about. So that's why you avoided us.
Zach, no read.
Yeah, Zach, you learn to read. Learn to read more than Reddit posts or threads or forums or whatever they're called. I don't use Reddit.
Same.
But as I was saying, today we're talking about books, specifically the challenge we initiated way back in episode 6. I read The Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee Stewart, and Ryan read
Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians by Brandon Sanderson.
Wow. So yeah, if you want to go back to how that challenge went and how we talked about Brandon Sanderson beforehand and Mysterious Benedict Society, you can check out episode 6 of the podcast. You can find it on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Pandora, YouTube, what have you. We're pretty much everywhere at this point.
Woohoo!
We're everywhere except in the 1%. But one day, we can get there.
You can't
and then
escape
donate
us.
all the money. All right, but moving on, how would you describe Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians?
Well, okay, so I went into this and kind of had like a decent idea from what you had told me, but when I read it, it did, from immediately, I got Percy Jackson vibes only because of the narration. Yes, I'm basing it off of Percy Jackson, but like, the narration style from Brandon Sanderson is much more fun, and having read a few of his other books, I was not expecting that right off the bat. Because Alcatraz, he's jokey. It's all in first person. He's like, hey, I'm doing this. I bet you were expecting this, and then it's funny because he foreshadows stuff that doesn't immediately get brought up, and it's interesting.
Right.
But
Oh yeah, definitely.
it definitely, to describe it, it follows this orphan, Alcatraz Smedry, who is given a mysterious bag of sand for his 13th birthday, and then he's immediately just kind of thrust into a war between a group of people called the Free Kingdomers and librarians. Yes, he's beating up the old lady who sits behind the desk at your local library.
Hey man, they told me to shush once. I wasn't very happy about that.
Yeah, and neither was Alcatraz. Yeah, but it's a very good, interesting series. It has a very unique power system and world building, which I think was pretty interesting to read. And if I were to give it like kind of what the theme was, I think it would be, one, you can't believe everything you read, as I say as I read this book. And then also, you need to learn that your faults can be just as useful and important as your strengths. Which I think was pretty interesting. And then obviously the theme of family and everything. But
Right. Yeah, and what's cool about Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians is that like how goofy and wacky it gets, like there's still a really strong emotional core to it. Like when Alcatraz learns the life lesson, it hits really hard and then compared to the rest of the book.
I mean, like it definitely had a whole lot of like big beats in it, which I thought was pretty interesting. Like I said, reading it, I was just like, I went into this very like, oh, I tried reading this when I was a kid. I didn't like it. And I'm reading it now. I'm like, why didn't I read this as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of more appreciation you can get from reading as an adult, especially when you get later into the series. Like, book 5 is pretty dark. I was really surprised how dark book 5 gets, and you don't. I don't want to say anymore. It's just like, yeah, just keep reading. It's fun. It gets better. Each book is easily better than the last.
That is good.
As for The Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee Stewart, it's essentially like Kingsman for kids. We mentioned that before in another episode. It follows this kid, Rainey, a gifted 11-year-old orphan, as he partakes in a series of odd tests that leads him to being recruited in a secret mission to save the world. I would say themes of teamwork, loyalty, and the love for knowledge are explored, as well as a stance on the ethics of knowledge, like how, knowledge is power and how to use power responsibly and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's it's a very it's an intriguing book, but as you're gonna use this moment as like a segue to the next thoughts of what are our spoiler free thoughts on the book. Like, what would you how would you review Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians?
Well, I kind of say as I enjoyed it, and there were some parts that were a little bit annoying or unimpactful. Like I said, I enjoyed the world building, but it also contradicted everything that was science based. And I'm like, I usually can like ignore that for like stuff like this. I read Percy Jackson, but some of the stuff was like, yeah, elevators are stupid. Stairs are the more practical thing, and I'm like, huh? Because the idea.
I will say that there is an explanation for that in like book 4 when they realize when Alcatraz makes a connection between like why these people think these things are dumb.
Because I'm like, as I'm reading it, I'm just like, guys, elevators are kind of practical. I get it. Stairs are healthy. I love taking the stairs, but come on. And then stuff like,
you've been brainwashed by the librarians, Ryan.
Then that was our explanation for everything. Was that like, yeah, you're brainwashed by the librarians, and I get that, but it's like it's the same explanation for everything, and I wish there had been a little bit more explanations for some of the things. So boiling it down to, yeah, the librarians brainwashed everything, and the teachers are also librarian spies, and so therefore you're just an idiot. And I'm like, oh, thanks.
Plato's allegory of the caveman.
Yeah, pretty much. And then also some of the chapters just, as I say, just didn't need to be chapters. Like some of them were like very much like just long for no reason, or they were very much there. Like it just kind of it didn't need to be a chapter. It could have been part of the previous chapter or the next chapter. Like it's very like staccato chapters, which I thought was interesting. Because again, having read some of his other books, and then also the ending is very abrupt. Yes, it leaves you on a cliffhanger, but it's also like just abrupt. Like it is like almost like they pulled an emergency brake on you, and so I was like, oh, okay, that's the end. Nothing. Okay, cool. Y'all had this whole heartfelt sad goodbye, and now it's not. But okay,
right.
But that's
I mean, it's just like it's kicking off a wild adventure. But I feel like it ties the immediate adventure up pretty well, though.
It ties it up, like it ties up that immediate adventure. But I was also like, wow, that it was weird because I realized this all took place in like the span of like a day, like this was a day trip, like to the library. I was just like, that's kind of like interesting, but kind of also like I was expecting more. I was like, it's
expecting
actually
more, like from a book of only 300 pages.
Yeah, I realized I was like, this is actually a short book. Like I thought it was gonna be a little bit longer, but also looking back, little Ryan looked at this and was like, oh man, 300 pages. Ooh, that's gonna be a lot. And now I'm like,
that's more than 200.
And now I'm like, oh, 800 pages. Yeah, that's not a lot. I can do that in like maybe a week or so. So right. Yeah, no, it's I will say it was very interesting to read. I will say the part I loved the most was the 2 unique power systems presented in it, because they're very unique. I will get more into that in the spoilers talk, but like it definitely changes the game and how he learns to use those individual powers, and also the fun conversational narration of the story. I'm a sucker for stories where the main character is just narrating in their own wacky way. So,
right. Yeah, and in the framework of Alcatraz is that this is an adult Alcatraz that's writing a memoir about his adventures, and he just gets to play around and fool the reader whenever possible. He's like, but I have all the answers and you don't, so you really don't know where it's going. But I do. I can give you red herrings and you wouldn't even know.
I feel like that's part of that is like, oh yeah, this is gonna be, it's interesting because like, yeah, he controls the story. But at the same time, it's like, I feel like the Brandon Sanderson was just like, yeah, I'm gonna make this up as I go, and we'll see where this takes us. All I have to do is make sure I have that one part that I introduced in chapter 1. I don't have to have it in this book. It could be all the way in the last book, but
right,
who cares?
Yeah, actually, it's fun. I think. Well, maybe I'll save this for a little bit later. But Brandon Sanderson, actually, this was one of the few books where he didn't plot ahead of time. He just wrote it because he was supposed to be writing a different book. So when he turned this book into the publisher instead of the book he was supposed to turn in, apparently his publisher got pretty mad.
I believe it. Because I read this and I'm like, that's just very just like out of character, but okay.
Yeah, no, it's like, I think, yeah, he was supposed to be writing Mistborn 3, but he was like, he finished writing Mistborn 2, and he was like, man, I just need like write a little fun little thing to kind of like, because in Mistborn it's just so intense and exhausting to write.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely.
So he just wrote this fun little adventure about this wacky kid who breaks things, and then and then he turned it in, and his agent was like, yeah, you're supposed to turn in something else.
I feel like just reading this, he's like, yeah, this is my fan fiction. This is what I was just like. I felt like he just looked outside. He's like, you know what? It'd be cool if a kid just broke things and just had it as a superpower. Let's do that. Like,
right. I feel like it's like Brandon Sanderson at his most Brandon Sanderson. Like, if you listen to his podcast and stuff like that, all the jokes he makes, I'm like, yeah, this is the guy that wrote Alcatraz.
Yeah, like reading Mistborn, I'm like, I can understand why that's exhausting. Because besides having to narrate it to like write out the power system, Mistborn 2 is just depressing as hell. Like, it's very. I just finished Mistborn 2. I'm like a third of the way through Mistborn 3, but the second book is just depressing as hell, especially the ending. It just it gets sad, and I'm like, damn, this guy was going through something.
They're pretty long too. Like they're decent size. They're not incredibly long, but like you look at it, it's like what 600, 700 pages roughly.
Yeah, somewhere around. Well, not. It's more than 600, 700 pages.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
It depends on what size your copy is.
Oh, maybe. I'm wrong. It is not 600, 700 pages. It's less than. It's almost 500.
Oh, well, that's surprising.
I think it's just because the book is tall, so it holds more pages or holds more words.
Well, it makes sense to me.
But what are your spoiler-free thoughts on Mysterious Benedict Society?
So I'm glad that you're not like overly positive about Alcatraz, because I'm not overly positive about Mysterious Benedict Society.
I expected as much.
I mean, I didn't really like it, but it's not. Mysterious Benedict Society is not a bad book. It's just not my thing. I do think this is a good example of plot storytelling, which is similar to like Edgar Allan Poe or even a lot of commercial films. Like MCU does a lot of plot storytelling as well. I'm more into character storytelling, which is why Alcatraz versus Evil Librarians was so my thing, because it's funny. 2, it's very well plotted, and 3, like there's really strong character moments, and everything is motivated by characters. So it's like, yeah.
Wait, didn't you tell me it had no plot?
No, so no, obviously there is a plot. Like you can still plot it out. Obviously, like I went through revisions to tie in the plot and all this stuff, but this one didn't have an outline.
I was joking, Kevin.
Oh, rip! No, you got me. But yeah, with Mysterious Benedict Society, I mean, obviously there's still a love for plot storytelling, because a lot of plot-driven books and stories still get recognized for today. I mean, Edgar Allan Poe is still required reading for a lot of high schoolers, and then, but it's just not my thing personally.
Fair.
And most of the time with these plot-driven stories, the characters tend to be flat and unmotivated, taking away from the emotional impact of the moral of the story, which is kind of like what happened with Mysterious Benedict Society. Like the first 100 pages were interesting, but then once it revealed that like, oh, now you're going to be a spy, and then like the characters like they just agree to be spies just because the plot demands it more than like they actually feel motivated to do it. And then like, well, and I'll talk about this after the break when we go into spoiler territory, but like, it starts changing perspective, and then like everything, the story just kind of glides along because it has to, not because like this is the direction the characters are taking it.
And but like, I'll definitely agree. It does. It's very jarring to go from like, hey, these are like some fun little tests that prove how smart you are, which I was like, oh, these are all interesting. And then all of a sudden, yeah, you're spies. And I'm like, huh?
You're spies now.
It was like, save the world. I'm like, huh? Where did this come from? And they're just like, oh, and I was like, yeah, you'll be fine. I know you got guardians. It'll be good.
Just take a bunch of orphans and make them fight crime.
I mean, isn't that the superhero narrative? Spider-Man.
Yeah, that is. I mean, Batman literally recruits orphans and trains them to fight crime.
Is Mysterious Benedict Society a spinoff of Batman?
A narcoleptic Batman. Yes. But I mean, like, even though I have those gripes with Mysterious Benedict Society, it's still, the messages that it has is still really interesting, about like the ethics of knowledge and how all knowledge is power, and power should be used responsibly. And then also like teamwork and loyalty and all that stuff. And like these are smart kids that like love knowledge so much. So it kind of like, as a kid's novel, it kind of encourages the kids who read it to kind of be as just as curious as those main characters. And then there's a lot of puzzles in the book too, and story wise, that was fun to like figure out with the characters as well as like the whole book in itself is kind of like its own big puzzle, which kind of like, as I'll mention further, like works, but also doesn't, works for it and against it at the same time, but
Right.
in a really strange way. But I will talk about this more after the break, which is going to start right now. Starting a podcast? Try a Podbean Unlimited hosting plan. It's what we use here at Committed Critics, giving us the opportunity to have our show on Pandora, iHeartRadio, and even Spotify. You can get your first month of unlimited hosting for free on us by going to podbean.com/committedcrits, just like our Twitter, or by clicking the link in the description. Podbean, the easiest, most affordable option to get started in podcasting. And we're back from break. And now that we're back from break, like I said earlier, it's spoiler time, baby.
Woo!
We're going to talk about spoilers here and out for Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians. Obviously, you're keeping it to the first book, not to the rest of the series, because Ryan hasn't read the rest of the series. Same thing with Mysterious Benedict Society. We're just talking about the first book, not second, third, or I guess there's a new prequel now.
There's a prequel, and now there's a fourth book. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
He's just cashing those checks.
I didn't realize there was a fourth book until recently, so I gotta go find that now.
It must be very recent, because I know the prequel is very recent.
They're adults.
Oh, wow. That actually sounds more interesting now. Is it still a kid's book?
Yeah, I think.
Well, all right. Well, I mean, Trenton Lee Stewart, more power to you. So now we're going to talk. Yeah. So like I said, we're going to talk about spoilers of the books. So if you haven't read them and you don't want spoilers, go away now. Read the books. Highly recommend Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians.
Highly recommend Mysterious Benedict Society.
Yep, exactly. So what have you got to lose? Get them from the library. They're free. You got nothing better to do than be quarantined, so why not read a book?
He's got a point.
Yeah. But going back to the topic, I really enjoyed the first 100 pages of Benedict Society because it is the most character-driven part of the entire book. Mm-hmm. We are really closely focused on Rainey as he's taking these tests, and he's making new friends, and he's kind of leaving his old life behind. Kind of get some flashbacks here and there. So I'm reading it. I'm like, oh, this is really cool. Like the character has a goal. So and we and then he just like his expectations keep getting subverted. So like it's forcing him to kind of adapt as he like meets new friends and all that stuff. And this was like really interesting. One puzzle after the next. And you were able to follow with the character with the puzzle and like maybe even potentially solve it before they do.
Mm-hmm.
This is really. Yeah, so this is like my favorite part of the book, essentially, the first 100 pages. And like and since that's such a 100 pages is a good span in the beginning to hook a reader in, and you hook them in like that, when like a kid reads it, they're gonna be like, oh yeah, this is great. They're kind of like stick to it to the end. And same thing with most readers, I believe. Like once you're 100 pages in and you like it, boom. After that, just kind of goes with it.
That was me with this book as a kid, because the first chapter, I was already kind of like, oh, this is interesting, and it just kept building up from there. And I think that was probably one of the first like larger books I read, like as a child, mm-hmm. And because I read this when I was like 7 or 8. But I was
right. It's a decent size, like under 500 pages.
Yeah, so this is the first large book I read, and I was like, oh, I don't want to read this because it's big, and I don't want to read that big. And then
you didn't want to read big books as a kid?
After reading this, I did.
Did you ever read Inkheart?
Yeah, I did. I don't remember it that well though. Look, Kevin, my mom gave this to me for my birthday, and I was like, I don't want a book for my birthday. And then I read it, and I was like, I want books for my birthday.
Wait, how did your mom know to pick this one particular book, though?
So the characters in this are all smart but socially inept. They all kind of come from like they all have like different perspectives in life, and I think
Mm-hmm.
Sticky may have some form of autism. I'm not sure,
Mm-hmm.
but
Right.
me growing up, I had Asperger's, which is a very mild form of autism.
Mm-hmm.
And so like my mom found that and she gave it to me because she was like maybe this will help him, kind of understand that he can understand the world, like somehow some way, he can recognize, hey, yeah, you may not be able to like be socially connected with a lot of people, but like you can still express yourself in a different way, and it did help me a lot as a kid. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, she picked.
Representation.
Yes, this book definitely did help me as a kid. A little personal point in my life, but yes, thank you everyone for supporting.
I
Um,
support you, Ryan.
Thank you.
That's why I'm not completely crapping on this book because obviously it still has its merits that I really enjoy. But yeah, it does. I think it does a really great job with representation as well.
Mm-hmm.
With for kids. But what's one thing that you like about Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians?
So like I said, kind of the non-spoiler part, I love the power system in this.
Mm-hmm.
So Smedries all have a different like ability that seems kind of useless upon first hearing about it, because like Alcatraz, his is that he breaks stuff whenever he touches it. His grandfather, his is that he's always late for things. And then what was uh, Lord, why am I forgetting names right now?
There's Sing who
Si-
trips whenever there's danger nearby.
Yes, and then I can't remember the other guy's name. Why am I horrible with
The
names right
Quentin who kind of says
Yeah,
just random things.
pretty much. And so it's interesting to see how those powers work, because like Alcatraz, obviously he can break anything. So like, yeah, he breaks the stuff that they might need, but he also can break weapons if they're coming at him, like if they're threatening him with a
Mm-hmm.
gun or something, or he can like
Right.
break the floor if they're needing to escape. Like his seems the most useful in battle, but then also his grandfather. Yeah, he's late to everything, but he's also late to his own death, which is I
Mm-hmm.
thought was the most hilarious thing in the world, because I was like, late to your death. Interesting. I like it.
I love how he says like sometimes I'm so late to my own appointment that I arrive there when I'm leaving. It's just like wait what?
Yeah, it's like I was like, how does this work? But like, it's different. It's more fun. It kind of get in. It definitely is like Brandon Sanderson style to make a power system that is at first glance like, huh? But then it's actually like really smart. Kind of like how he does in
Mm-hmm.
Mistborn. But I also like my favorite part of the book is probably everything, the battle with the Aliven and Blackburn, because it's very much different from the rest
Oh
of the
yeah.
book. Because like
Mm-hmm.
one Alcatraz is learning how to use his power to break stuff, but also it's like you get to see all the characters in action. Because for the most part, from the beginning, you kind of just see Alcatraz like kind of stumbling along, and everyone else is kind of doing like, yeah, we're trying to explain everything to him, and
Mm-hmm.
but everything in that, and you see the escape from the library. It's just fun and wacky. It gave me very good vibes.
All right, you hear that, everyone? That's an endorsement to read Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians. So, man, I wanted to say this one special thing about it, but I can't because it's a spoiler until you read book 5.
Jesus,
Um,
Kevin.
I know. I was like, there. That's your insinuation to read the whole series. Like, hey, there's a secret surprise
He's
coming
like,
up. It's not really a secret, but like,
I thought you were gonna say like, oh yeah, I can't say without spoiling the next book. No, I can say it without spoiling 4 books down.
exactly. Ah, man, but once you get there, oh, dude, it's great. Biggest mic drop in history.
Oh god.
Man, but enough with being positive. What is one particular moment that you did not like in Alcatraz?
All right, so it's interesting because Alcatraz and therefore Sanderson do kind of point it out, but pretty much everything in the prison, because it does a very emotional moment for Alcatraz, but at the same time I'm like, this is 3 chapters that could have just been 1 chapter, like one long chapter
Mm-hmm.
or 2 at the most, because the first chapter is like a guilt like pity trip, and it's kind of like
Mm-hmm.
Alcatraz being like, dang, I failed. All I do is break everything. And the second is the villains kind of gloating, and they're like, yeah, we've captured you now. We have the sands, yada, yada, yada. And the third is pretty much like it's Alcatraz coming to terms with himself, and then also the most ridiculous prison break attempt ever. where I was just like, really? This y'all broke out this easily? I'm like, man, librarians are stupid.
Look, it's a book for 12-year-olds.
I know. I was just like, wow, okay. I'm like, yeah. But also exploring the library, it was okay, but it wasn't.
You didn't like the talking dinosaurs?
No, that annoyed the hell out of me.
Really?
I was like, when I saw that, I was like, really? This is what we're doing with talking dinosaurs who like, what, they say they were from space or something?
No, they were just from another country.
Yeah, they're from another country, and they just come over and they just want to find stuff. But since because the librarians make it seem like dinosaurs are extinct, and they enlarge their corpses to make them look like they were huge. Therefore, they have to kidnap all the dinosaurs and hide them. And I'm just like, okay, cool, nice little tidbit. I didn't need that, but cool.
You didn't like the constant misspelling of pterodactyl, then just to the point, just names the guy a different name.
Yeah, I did like that. That was pretty funny. Because, like I said, it's the narration part that's funny. Because he's just like, yeah, I don't know how to spell pterodactyl, so why should I even try to spell it? And so I just kept. At first, I was like, that's not how you spell pterodactyl. And then I realized what he was doing. I was like, okay, I see what you're. That's pretty funny.
Oh yeah.
But no, exploring the library, I was just kind of like, okay, like it doesn't really ramp up until technically the prison scene, because that's when they start gloating. But then after the prison scene, it just goes from 0 to 100 real quick, and I was like, oh
yeah.
Yeah.
I like how sharply it changes too, because it's still motivated by the events and character decisions. But it's really, I think when you write for middle grade, you kind of have to exaggerate the shift in tone, so that way a kid can recognize it right off the bat.
Right. So Kevin, you kind of have the inverse of mine of where the book, whereas I don't like the middle-ish in the beginning, but I love the end. You have you don't like you like the beginning.
Yeah, like I said, I really like the first 100 pages, but then really I think it really is on page 100 suddenly everything shifts. So for the first 100 pages we're really tight focusing on Rainey, but suddenly once we get to the part where they accept the mission, we suddenly switch into an omniscient POV. They kind of we're focusing we're focusing a little bit on every character in the room, and then that's how it is for the rest of the book. We're just focusing on one specific character every now and then. But even though a lot of the stuff is hidden from the reader by focusing on Rainey instead of another character that's going through through some of the events, in order to keep the mystery for the reader. So it just kind of feels a lot of very listless and motivated and unmotivated. It was just kind of hard for me to be engaged with the story after that shift happened, because it was just kind of all the cool stuff was happening off screen, and then but just to toy with the reader, which I don't really like it when that happens. I want readers to have all the information they need as soon as possible, so that way they can get feel more engaged with the material. But it's not a bad thing. A kid can, a kid can read it and be like, oh yeah, this is great, I love it. It's not, I'm not saying it's terrible, but it's just not my thing.
And I will say some of the characters that are kind of flat in this book do develop in the next books. SQ, you see in this book is just kind of this bumbling idiot, and throughout the rest of the series he becomes a major part of it. Some of the a lot of the characters just kind of actually develop as characters in the next books, and you can say if that's bad character development or not, but this book, it definitely some of the characters do seem flat. It does focus more on these 4 kids than anyone else, because they're pretty much locked onto this island by themselves, so you only kind of see everything from their perspective, and you mostly see from Rainey and Sticky's and occasionally Kate's, and very rarely Constance, because they're trying to hold in that secret of Constance's true
she's 3 years old.
Yeah, as a child, I was like, that's insane, she's 3 and she's smart, what? But
exactly.
No, it's definitely they definitely trying to hold it to those 4 kids focus, and in the future books it does change. A lot of the plot twists do get somewhere like Milligan, they explore that.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that.
Well, that's good. I mean, like, I do plan to read the second one at some point, to kind of like be like, oh, I hope it gets better, because but also like I like to try to read as much as I can. So like, you know, whatever I get my hands on, I like to read it. So yeah, this is, you know, Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians and the Mysterious Benedict Society. You can check them out at the library. You can check them out at a bookstore. Um, Mysterious Benedict Society, I'm not sure if it's on Hoopla, but I know Alcatraz, the audiobooks are on Hoopla, and that's actually the graphic audiobooks. So it's like has its own voice cast and music and sound effects and all that stuff. Really fantastic. So, you know, Hoopla Digital, Hoopla, not sponsored, but that we just use it like all the time.
Yeah, pretty much.
If you have a library card, hopefully you have Hoopla. It's fantastic. Great app. Also, there is the Libby, Libby, or Overdrive. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah. Overdrive.
I keep forgetting what it's called. No, it's Overdrive. Outlook is the Microsoft email. Yeah. I got those two confused a long time ago, and, you know, it's haunted me ever since.
That's haunted you ever since?
It's haunted me ever since. Is the scariest thing ever in my life, getting those two mixed up.
Oh, wow.
It's two very different things. One lets you read books, one lets you read emails.
But as long as you're reading, you're not Zach.
Oh, yeah. Any last words, Ryan, before we end the podcast?
Read more, people. Experience more. There's a whole world in books. So go out there, do something other than look at Netflix.
Read books, gain knowledge. Knowledge is power. Use power for evil.
I say this like we're not about to like do a whole review on a TV show and a comic book, but you know.
Yeah. Just don't worry about it. You just read. You know, don't look at next week's episode.
Yeah, that was me teasing next week's episode. Everyone, tune in.
Invincible. You've been listening to Committed Critics. You can follow us on Twitter at Committed Crits. That's COMMITTED CRITS. You can follow us on YouTube at Committed Critics, spelled the same there as it is here and everywhere else. You think you can support us on Patreon. Just $1 or $2 a month would be great. And special thanks to our patron, Davey Peppers, who was a guest on a few other episodes before, and a good friend of ours. You can check out his YouTube channel, Game Mechanics, to watch video essays of video games and like how storytelling in video games and game mechanics themselves can apply to society. It's really fantastic. Like they got a new video coming up soon that includes Scott Pilgrim versus the World, the game. I'm really excited for that. Special thanks to our sound engineer, Jordan Smearman, and our editor, Zach Wright. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Adios.